So today we're going to make a double crochet. We're going to start with a slip knot, which I have a video on, and a chain foundation row, which I also have a video on. And we've learned the single crochet in the past. Now we're going to learn a double crochet. So I start with my slip knot as always, and we're going to make a chain of 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And if you're still learning and your chains aren't this even, that's okay. You can usually pull it straight a few times to kind of even them out a little bit. They'll look better over time as you practice. So the double crochet is very similar to the single crochet, but we're going to be yarning over first before we insert our hook into the first stitch. Now I like to teach, when you're working on the foundation row, I like to teach to turn over your work and look on the back, and you'll see these bumps. That's where we're going to go into. You'll find the first bump kind of sticks up from your work a little bit. We're going to go into that, but we're going to yarn over first, and we're going to go into that first bump. It takes a little bit of wiggling sometimes in this foundation row to get those stitches in. This is the hardest row. So once you've yarned over, insert your hook and pulled that piece of yarn through, you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Now you're going to yarn over, pull through 2, and you'll have 2 loops on your hook. Now you're going to yarn over one more time and pull your hook through the last 2, and that's a double crochet. So it's taller than a single crochet, and these are UK or US terms, by the way. US calls this a double crochet. UK calls this a triple crochet or a treble crochet. I've heard both terms, so I'm using US terms here, so adjust accordingly. I'm sorry. Okay, continuing on, the next stitch, yarning over again. We always start with the yarn over, insert your hook, pull your yarn through so that you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and it's that easy. Just always start with a yarn over and then insert your hook into the next stitch. Yarn over, pull your first loop through so that you have 3 loops on the hook, and then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And as you go down the line here, you'll end up with 14 of these, because we chained 15. That allows us to have space to make 14 double crochets, 1 less than the number of chains that we made. Let's do it again. Yarn over, insert your hook using your fingernail if you need to, yarn over and pull through so that you have 3 on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and that's it. We're just going to continue down the line. When you have 3 on your hook, you yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Always yarn over first before you go into the next stitch. Pull up your loop so that you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull that loop up so that you now have 3 on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Just going to keep going. I yarn over, insert my hook into the next stitch, pull up the loop. I have 3 on a hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Don't mind my little It looks like I have a knot in there. Never mind. Moving on. yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, and pull up a loop. You have 3 on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. You can see how this is starting to look a little taller than the single crochets. And anything you can do with the single crochet in terms of basic projects, you can do with the double crochet. Go a little faster because your rows are taller, so you won't have to have as many rows in your project. But if you're just starting out and you're wanting to make pot holders, placemats, small rugs, blankets, this is a great stitch for that. Basic stitch. Lots and lots of patterns you can make with this, but when you're just starting out, those basic square or rectangle type items are really easy to make. Now I'm in the very last stitch. See that last bump that comes up? That's my last stitch. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now I'm going to want to turn this and go back the other way. So I'm going to chain 2 at the end and then just turn my work over. The hardest part is done. Going into that foundation chain row is a little more tedious than the rest of them. The rest of them are much easier. If you look at the top of your work, you see a chain started happening, and that's what you're working in. So we're going to go into this very first stitch. I'm just going to put my needle here for a second so you can see where we're going. We're going underneath the top 2 pieces of that chain, or what some people refer to as a V on the top. We just go underneath the V's. That's where all of our stitches are going to go from here on out. So I'm going to yarn over, go into the first stitch, looks like that, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarning over, going into the next stitch, looks like that, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And I'm just continuing this all the way down the line, and I will have 14 when I'm done. And you can continue this until your item is as big as you want it to be. Now if you want it to be wider, you would have made a longer chain so that you've got more width to work in, but we just did a 15 chain foundation for this little sample, which makes it 14 stitches wide, but you can go as long as you want by just doing as many rows as you want over and over again. And when you get to the end of this, you make sure you've got 14 and not any less or any more. When you get to the end of this, you'll just chain 2, turn, and start again, over and over again. So I'm on the very last stitch. I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And here's what we've got. We're going to count these just to make sure. Now you've got a chain 2 at the very beginning, and we're going to count that as our first double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So good. If we had less, we'd end up with less and less as we went along, and we'd end up with a triangle. So we don't want that if we're trying to make something square or rectangle. So now that we know we have enough, we can chain 2 and turn our work and start again. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go into the first stitch. Now as you look at this, you'll see that there is a stitch at the very bottom of your hook. For our purposes here, we don't want to go into that. Not today, not for this tutorial. We're going to start at the very first not yet used stitch, if that makes sense. So the one at the very base of the stitch you're on, that is not the one we want. We basically have already done that with our chain 2. So we're going to go into the very first one that's not yet used. That way our count stays correct. And we're just going to keep going until we have a stitch sample as big as we need it to be. And if this isn't looking right, don't be afraid to pull it out and start over and do it as many times as you need to practice. But that's it. That's the double crochet. Gets easier with practice. Very common stitch. You'll use this your entire crochet career on a million projects, and I hope you enjoy everything you make with it. That's the double crochet. Hi, it's Rebecca. Thank you so much for watching. I'm adding new videos at least once a week, so I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe so you don't miss anything. See you next time. Bye.